The first sound was the door. Not a knock, not footsteps, not someone calling from the hallway. The door itself moved, hard enough that the children inside the room thought it might splinter from the frame. On the other side was the kitchen, dark and close, and familiar, in the way a family house becomes familiar after enough summers spent there. But that night, sometime after 3 a.m, there was something sitting in that kitchen that none of them understood. They'd only seen it for a second when the door opened. A figure in the chair, a grey suit, a pale face, a clown's face. Then it turned towards them.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why drivers have trusted Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years. Just tell Progressive what you want to pay, and they'll show you coverage options that fit your budget. Visit Progressive.com to find a car insurance rate that works for you. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
I like things my way. My coffee, my schedule, and my treatment. So I talked to my doctor about self-injecting with the Vyvgart Hytrulo pre-filled syringe, which contains efgartigimod alpha and hyaluronidase QVFC. It's injected under your skin, subcutaneously. It means I can inject in my space, on my time. It's my treatment, my way. Visit VyvgartMyWay.com. That's VYVGART MyWay.com. And talk to your doctor about Vyvgart Hytrulo. Brought to you by Argenix.
Queen Carvania stood haloed by the morning sun. An army hung on her every word.
My champions, I have sold my chariot on Carvana. 'Twas a lovely SUV, an inexplicably queenly offer. They're even coming to the castle to collect it. Tonight, we feast! An offer you can feast on. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why drivers have trusted Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years. Just tell Progressive what you want to pay, and they'll show you coverage options that fit your budget. Visit Progressive.com to find a car insurance rate that works for you. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
I like things my way. My coffee, my schedule, and my treatment. So I talked to my doctor about self-injecting with the Vyvgart Hytrulo pre-filled syringe, which contains efgartigimod alpha and hyaluronidase QVFC. It's injected under your skin, subcutaneously. It means I can inject in my space, on my time. It's my treatment, my way. Visit VyvgartMyWay.com. That's VYVGART MyWay.com. And talk to your doctor about Vyvgart Hytrulo. Brought to you by Argenix.
Hello, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Toby.
And welcome to the Whispering Woods podcast. This episode is all about
Clown.
Yeah, we've got a couple of creepy clown stories. The first one I heard ages ago on Spooked podcast, and I watched it on a documentary on Netflix. And the second one, we're back to the Isle of Wight. But first of all, if you'd like to support the podcast, you can do so by visiting patreon.com/The Whispering Woods, where we have a number of tiers, and for a small monthly fee, you can listen ad-free and in advance. We're also on Apple Premium, where for $4.99 you can listen to all episodes ad-free and in advance. Also, I've started picking up social media again now, so I'm going through all these newspaper clippings and doing little TikToks and reels, and you know, they're going okay. I'm doing them, which is the main thing, because you know me with social media. Right. Are you ready for the stories?
Yes, I am.
The older cousin slammed the door shut, and the children threw themselves against it, pushing with all the strength they had as something on the other side began to ram itself into the wood. Again and again it hit, forcing the door open just enough for them to see flashes of that powder-white face through the gap. Then it stopped. For one terrible moment, there was only silence. And then an eye appeared in the round hole where the handle should have been. A voice came through from the other side, soft and coaxing. "Let me in. I only want to play." Oscar's family had always known there was something a little different about him. When he was born, his grandmother told his mother that the baby had a gift. Oscar would later say he was not sure gift was the right word for it, because what followed him through life did not always feel like a blessing. Years before that voice came through the door, before the children found themselves bracing their small bodies against the wood, Oscar Mendoza had travelled with his family to San Felipe. It was an annual family trip. There was a child he never especially loved going. The journey itself was exhausting, a long drive from Dallas into Mexico, and the place they arrived in felt very different from the life he was used to at home. There were fewer comforts, fewer distractions, and for children accustomed to television, cool rooms, and familiar routines, the days could feel long. But everything changed when the carnival came to town. Oscar's family stayed on the main street, and when the celebrations began, the whole neighbourhood seemed to transform around them. Rides appeared, music carried through the streets, food vendors set up nearby. There were parades, crowds, lights, voices, and the kind of excitement that made the heat and the tiredness disappear for a while. That year, they arrived in the early hours of the morning, sometime around 3, and stopped at a taco stand before going to the house. While they were there, a dog began following them. No one had planned to take him in, and no one knew exactly where he came from, but he stayed close, followed them home, and by the next day he was still there, as if he had quietly decided the family was now his. For the children, the carnival was the one part of the trip that felt magical. They watched the performers pass by from the street, shy and laughing when the dancers waved at them. When they heard music announcing the clowns, Oscar and his brother climbed onto their father's car to get a better view. The clowns moved through the parade, making people laugh, handing out sweets, playing to the crowd, and for a few minutes, it was exactly what a carnival should be. Then there was an explosion. At first, the children did not understand what had happened. One of the clowns seemed to fly through the air and land only a short distance from them, his body striking the ground with a sound they would never forget. In that first stunned moment, it looked so unreal that Oscar's brother thought it might be part of the performance. He laughed because he didn't yet understand that what he was seeing was not a joke. Then the clown moved. His face had been turned toward the cement, but somehow he turned enough to look back at them. Oscar would later remember the open eyes, the expression, and the terrible sense that the clown had seen them watching. The laughter stopped at once. His brother was so frightened that the moment changed from childish confusion into pure terror. Their mother realised something had happened and rushed them inside. But the children did not stay where they were told. They ran upstairs to the balcony and looked down over the street. And from there, the full horror of what had happened became clear. A truck had lost control as it came into town. It had struck people in the street and hit the clown car, throwing performers into the air. What had seemed at first like noise and confusion was something far worse. People had been killed, The parade had turned into a scene of chaos, and the street where the family had been laughing only moments before was now filled with bodies, fear and shouting. The police came, but there was little they could do. Eventually the bodies were taken away, and once the street had been cleared, water was used to wash away what remained. Afterwards, the family ate dinner. No one spoke much about what had happened. The adults seemed to decide that the best thing was silence, as if not naming it might keep the children from carrying it with them. Oscar carried it anyway, and so did his brother. More than anything, there was the feeling that they should not have laughed. They had not meant harm. They had not known. But the memory of that clown turning his face towards them stayed in the room long after the street had been washed clean. That night the children slept together. Oscar's brother was badly shaken, and although he was not usually the kind of child who frightened easily, the accident had undone him. Their older cousin, who was around 15, stayed with them like a babysitter and a guard, and they all crowded into one bed. Hoping the nearness of other bodies would make the house feel safer. But sometime in the early hours, Oscar's brother woke up sweating. The room they were sleeping in had 2 doors. One led towards the hallway and their grandfather's room. The other opened into the kitchen, and that kitchen door had a large round hole where the handle should have been. At first it was just one of those odd details of an old family house. By the end of the night, it would become the worst part of the room. Oscar's brother needed the bathroom, and he wanted water. He didn't want to go alone. Their cousin agreed to go with him. She got up and opened the door that led toward the kitchen. And that was when they saw him. A figure sat in a chair facing the wall. He wore a grey jumpsuit, and on his head was what Oscar first thought must be a clown mask. The face was pale, almost powder white, with that strange bold shape and hair at the sides that make it unmistakable. But the longer Oscar looked, the less it seemed like a costume. The face was an opaque powdery white with a bold crown and hair at the sides. Yet it didn't have the harmless flatness of a mask bought for a performance. It looked too real, too human, beneath whatever had happened to it. Then Oscar understood. It was the clown from the street, the one his brother had laughed at, the one they had seen thrown through the air. As the door opened, the figure began to turn towards them, and their cousin slammed the door shut before it could fully face them. Then something hit the other side. The impact shook the door so hard they thought it might break. Their cousin threw her weight against it. Oscar's brother pushed too, and Oscar scrambled over to help, all of them trying to keep the thing in the kitchen from forcing its way in. Each time it rammed the door, the wood shifted just enough for them to glimpse the face beyond it. Then the banging stopped. An eye appeared at the round hole in the door. The hand did not reach just blindly into the room. It felt deliberate. It felt as though it knew exactly where the children were pressed against the door, and the bloodied white glove stretched toward their cousin's hair as she tried to hold the wood shut. Through that opening, they saw the pale face pressed close, and a voice came from the kitchen, telling them to let him in. It said it only wanted to play. Then an arm came through the hole. The hand wore a white glove, but the glove was smeared with blood, and the wrist above it looked cut. The hand reached towards their cousin's hair as the children screamed for their grandfather. On the other side of the house, their grandfather woke. He had the dog in his room, the same dog that had followed the family home from the taco stand. When he realised the children were screaming, he released him. The dog didn't hesitate. The same animal that had followed them home from the taco stand ran straight towards the kitchen. as though whatever instinct had brought him to the family had been waiting for this moment. They heard the dog tear through the house towards the kitchen. Then came the growling, the snarling, the sound of an animal attacking whatever stood on the other side of that door. Their grandfather came out with a gun, shouting in Spanish for whoever was there to show himself. By then, the dog was in the kitchen, and the children could hear him fighting with something they still could not see properly. There was a snarling, movement, a terrible struggle just beyond the door, and then the thing in the kitchen bolted. They heard it run, not out through the front of the house, not back into the street, but upwards. It tore up the stairs and made for the roof, moving with a speed that made no sense for a man who had looked so broken and blooded only moments before. Then came the sound of a body landing outside on the cement. For one dreadful second, Oscar thought the clown had thrown himself from the roof and killed himself all over again. His grandfather went outside to look. There should have been a body. There should have been blood, or some sign of where the figure had landed after jumping from that height. But when they searched, there was nothing there. No injured man, no trail leading away, no proof that anyone had fallen from the roof at all. Whatever had been in that kitchen was gone. Then they went looking for the dog. They found him near the patio, lying still. The animal that had followed them home only the night before, the dog that had stayed with them as if he belonged to them, had died defending the children from whatever had come through that kitchen. For Oscar, that was one of the hardest parts of the whole night. It was frightening enough to see something impossible. It was another thing entirely to understand that an animal had heard their fear, run toward it, and not survived. His grandfather wrapped the dog in a towel, carried him out, and took him away in the truck. By morning, the police came to the house. There was no intruder to find, and no body outside where the thing had jumped from the roof. But in the kitchen, something remained. A dark, foul-smelling ooze had been left behind, and the smell of it was so bad that it seemed to confirm, in some terrible physical way, that the children had not imagined what had happened. One of the officers who saw it told Oscar's grandfather that he should bring in a priest to bless the house. It was not said like a polite suggestion. The officer seemed genuinely shaken by what he'd seen in the kitchen. He told Oscar's grandfather that he did not believe the thing had simply been a clown, or even a man. To him, it was something darker, something that needed a blessing, not an arrest. He didn't think they'd been dealing with a clown. After that night, the family never stayed in the house again. The experience had gone far beyond a frightening childhood memory, far beyond the shock of the accident in the street. The carnival had come and gone, the road had been washed, and the bodies had been taken away. But something had followed the children back into the house, wearing the face of the man they'd seen die. Years later, Oscar, his brother, and his cousins still talk about it. His grandmother also warned him not to speak too freely about what had happened. In her view, some things should not be named too often, because stories like that might do more than remember the dead. They might call something back. Not because they expected people to believe them, but because none of them had been able to forget it. They'd all seen the figure. They'd all heard it at the door. They'd all watched the aftermath unfold in a house that by morning no longer felt like a place any of them could safely sleep. But some stories do not stay quiet. Some stories wait in the dark with their face pressed against the door, asking to be let in. But not every clown story begins with a carnival accident, and not every strange figure in bright colours comes from the dead. Sometimes the story begins on an ordinary afternoon, in a quiet corner of the Isle of Wight, with 2 children following a sound they could not explain. In May 1973, 2 children were playing near Lake Common, close to Sandown on the Isle of Wight. The Isle of Wight has always had a slightly dreamlike quality to it. It's close enough to the mainland to feel familiar, but separate enough to feel like somewhere else entirely. Sandown itself is a seaside town, the kind of place associated with beaches, holiday makers, summer noise, and children being allowed to wander a little further than they might at home. That afternoon, the 2 children were out near the fields and waterways around Lake Common when they heard a strange sound. It was described as a kind of wailing, something like an ambulance siren, though not quite like any ordinary siren they recognised. It seemed to be coming from somewhere ahead of them, and instead of running away, they did what children often do when something strange interrupts an ordinary day. They followed it. The sound led them across open ground and towards a footbridge over a small stream. Somewhere near that bridge, the noise suddenly stopped. Then the children saw a hand appear. It came up from beneath the bridge, gripping the wood, and what followed was one of the strangest figures ever described in British paranormal folklore. The being pulled itself into view, awkwardly and almost clumsily, as if not quite put together in the same way a human body is. It was tall, thin, and strangely bright. Later, people would call it the Sandown Clown, or Sam the Sandown Clown, though the word clown only partly fits what the children described. It had the colours and oddness of a clown, but also something of a scarecrow, something of a puppet, and something almost mechanical. Its head sat directly on its shoulders with no clear neck. Its face was pale, with markings where the features should have been, triangular shapes for eyes, a square brown nose, and yellow lips that barely seemed to move when it spoke. It wore a pointed yellow hat, a green tunic with a red collar, and white trousers. Its hands were gloved in blue, and the children later said there were only 3 fingers on each hand. It did not behave like a monster. That may be the strangest part. It didn't chase them, it didn't threaten them. Instead, it seemed shy, curious, and oddly polite. It had something with it that looked like a black knobbed microphone attached to a white cord, and at first it seemed to use this to speak. Later, the children thought it could speak without it too, though its voice was unclear and its mouth barely moved. When they asked who it was, it gave an answer that would become part of the legend. It said, in effect, that it was all colours Sam. The children should probably have run. There in front of them was a thing that did not belong in any ordinary afternoon. It had come up from beneath a bridge, dressed in bright colours with a pale face, strange hands, and a voice that did not seem to work. But it did not rush at them, it did not bare its teeth or grab for them. Instead it spoke. The children would later say that the being communicated in a strange, uncertain way. Sometimes it seemed to use the object it carried, something like a microphone attached to a white cord, and sometimes it seemed able to speak without it. Its mouth barely moved, yet they understood enough to keep listening. It told them not to be frightened. Then it invited them to come with it. Nearby was a small hut or shed, partly hidden in that lonely stretch of ground near the water. Sam led the children towards it and they followed, caught somewhere between curiosity and fear. The hut was not like a normal place someone might live. Inside it seemed strange and cramped, with the feeling of something made for one person, and yet not quite made for human comfort. Sam told them he lived there. He also told them there were other people like him. When the children asked whether he was a man or a ghost or something else, his answers were difficult to pin down. He seemed to say yes and no at once, or gave replies that made sense only in the moment, and then slipped away when they tried to remember them properly. He said he was not human, but not exactly anything else they could name either. The children noticed more odd details as they sat with him. His ears were hidden under his hat, or perhaps he had none. His eyes were not like ordinary eyes, and his mouth seemed to be fixed in a way that made expression difficult. Even when he spoke, the yellow lips did not move properly. His hands in their blue gloves had only 3 fingers each, and his body seemed narrow and jointed, as if he'd been built from pieces. At one point, Sam showed them a notebook. On it, or in it, were words that seemed to confirm what he'd already told them. The message said something close to, "Hello, and I am all colours, Sam." It was an absurd sentence, childlike almost. And yet that is the part of what made the story linger. If the children had described a monster, it might have been easier to place. If they'd described a man in costume, it might have been easier to dismiss. But Sam was neither. He was bright, polite, odd, and unknowable. He showed them berries and ate some of them, though the children thought he did this in a strange way. He seemed to put them somewhere near where ears should have been, rather than into his mouth. There was something almost performative about him, as though he was trying to show the children how harmless he was, while never quite understanding how harmless things were supposed to behave. The encounter lasted far longer than a glimpse. This was not a shape seen from a window or a figure vanishing at the edge of a road. The children were close to him. They spoke with him. They watched him move. They sat in his little hut and tried to make sense of something that seemed to have stepped out of a half-remembered dream. Then, as strangely as the meeting had begun, it ended. Eventually, the children left Sam behind and returned to the ordinary world of roads, houses, parents, and daylight. But when they tried to explain what had happened, the story sounded impossible even as they told it. 2 children near Sandown, following a strange wailing sound across the fields, a footbridge, a brightly coloured figure climbing into view, and a being who called himself Sam, who said he was all colours, and who could never be comfortably placed among ghosts, aliens, fairies, men, or anything else that has a proper name.
You're listening to this podcast, so you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
I like things my way. My coffee, my schedule, and my treatment. So I talked to my doctor about self-injecting with the VivGuard Hytrulo prefilled syringe, which contains efgartigimod alpha and hyaluronidase QVFC. It's injected under your skin, subcutaneously. It means I can inject in my space, on my time. It's my treatment, my way. Visit VivGuardMyWay.com. That's VYVGART MyWay.com. And talk to your doctor about VivGuard Hytrulo. Brought to you by argenx.
Spooky, spooky clowns. The first story, extra spooky. The clown creature thing that the kids saw on the Isle of Wight, that to me is still spooky, even though people do cover that story in a quite jovial manner. I think it's spooky. All clowns are spooky.
Yeah, I don't like them.
I know you don't, just like you don't like dolls.
I don't like lots of things.
What would you prefer to run into at night walking down the road? A doll or a clown? What's your preference?
Well, a doll's probably more easier to execute the threat.
Yeah.
A clown's is bigger, innit?
Yeah. I suppose a doll, if it was walking up to you, you could just boot it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, even I could do that. I wouldn't even have to do the Spartan, would I? I could do
What?
the Spartan kick.
The Spartan? You said Spartan.
Did I? I don't know.
Spartan kick, yeah.
The Spartan kick. We're in the middle of a heat wave at the moment, guys. And it's killing me. I'm melting. I am the Wicked Witch of the West. And I am melting.
Yeah, it's quite hot.
All that's going to be left are my ruby red slippers.
Well, that's in this episode. I hope you enjoyed and we'll catch up with you again soon.
We will indeed. I'll catch up with you again on Thursday for the Reddit and Listener Story episode. Take care, everyone.
Goodbye.
You're listening to this podcast, so you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
I like things my way. My coffee, my schedule, and my treatment. So I talked to my doctor about self-injecting with the VivGuard Hytrulo prefilled syringe, which contains efgartigimod alpha and hyaluronidase QVFC. It's injected under your skin, subcutaneously. It means I can inject in my space, on my time. It's my treatment, my way. Visit VivGuardMyWay.com. That's VYVGART MyWay.com. And talk to your doctor about VivGuard Hytrulo. Brought to you by argenx.
The stories told on the Whispering Woods are inspired by historical records, witness reports, and local folklore. While every effort is made to research and represent events accurately, some details, names, and locations may differ from official accounts or have been changed out of respect for those involved. These episodes are created for storytelling and entertainment purposes and should not be considered definitive fact or investigative journalism.